This guy's name is Scolla, and he is a little dude with attitude from the book series that I'm working on. He is the sidekick to Beaumark, although he probably considers Beaumark to be his sidekick. Let's see. And I've been kind of messing around with this concept on and off for many years, trying to find that sweet spot between where the first thing that people look at him, they say, oh cool, you made a gremlin, and still keeping the proportions that I really like. Amy says, reminds her of Yoda. Yes, exactly. So after hearing, I made a physical sculpture of this guy, a concept or two back. Oh, you know what? Now that I'm on a computer, I can just bring this kind of stuff up and show it to you guys. So I did a version of him where he was, I would say, probably even more gremlin-like, I guess. And so to prove to myself, probably more than anything, I took a picture of Yoda, of Stitch from Lilo and Stitch, E.T., Gremlin, who else? Pretty much all those characters, and I superimposed them together, and I confirmed to myself, yes, all of these creatures have eyes, nose, mouth, little forehead, proportions almost identical. E.T. has a shorter forehead. He is the only outlier. And most of them have pointy, floppy ears. And I'm thinking, so I could purposely steer this guy way away from that to differentiate it. But every time I took it in a different direction, I just liked it less. And so I just had to ask myself, is it worth people thinking that I, ripped off some other franchise? Here's the sculpture that I did of the previous incarnation. Yeah, so like, does it count as a ripoff? I don't know. What do you guys think? Does this guy look too much like a gremlin or Yoda or someone else? D-Flow Sounds was going to say Gremlin Yoda. Yeah, it's funny. I mean, the worst thing you can say to an artist when you see their art is, oh, that looks just like X. And even though I know that myself, I still end up doing that to my artist friends when I see their stuff. It's just a way to connect, because you're saying, hey, we have a common experience, right? But it still hurts the little artist feelings who think that we're, these brilliant geniuses who come up with unique ideas all the time. Some of the things that are unique about this guy is that he has, he's got these bifurcated ears, right? Or they're kind of like moth or butterfly ears. And he's got a very kind of saggy body that he can inflate. It's got little like puffer spines, and he can do like a puffer fish and blow up. And he's got 4 legs instead of 2. He also has these interesting hands that he can exude webbing out of. He was one of the creatures. So I designed this world, right? For 20 years I've been working on this world. My mom wrote some books in it, and when she wrote the book, she came up with this guy out of whole cloth, and so I've just been kind of doing my artistic interpretation of her description of the guy, and then I made a few changes, like the forelegs and stuff like that. So yeah, that's where I'm at. I think I'm gonna work on the body a little bit right now. You can see it's obviously at a different stage of development than the head. D-Flow Sounds says, I say it leans more towards inspiration than ripping off. And Amy says, unique ideas are few and far between. Yeah, it's definitely a gray area where if you do something completely unique and alien at this point, it has to be almost so abstract that it's just not going to be compelling to most people. I think of the work of Wayne Barlowe. I don't know if you've seen his stuff. I'm gonna pull it up real quick because it's an interesting study in this topic. He is an amazing artist and really a visionary, I would say. But and he's done a lot of work in Hollywood, and some of his stuff has been translated to really, you know, cool things. But like look at this thing, right? What's even going on there? Like, why is this a? Does it have a head? Does it have a mouth? We don't know. And that's one of the cool things, is that he's just very brave in exploring these kinds of truly alien forms and shape languages that are not like most creature concepts that are more like this, right? Where it's like, oh yeah, it's more or less like a giraffe mixed with a pelican mixed, you know. Like once you start mixing earth animals, you're more in the realm of where people can identify and feel emotional connection and that kind of stuff. Whereas these kind of aliens, yeah, just very alien. So anyway, that's a lot of talking, not a lot of sculpting. Amy says, I like the whiskers. They make it look wise. I think that's why I thought Yoda. Oh, that's cool. I definitely do want him. I mean, his race are a race of scholars. It's their backstory is particularly hilarious because they were originally parasites that lived on these big, gigantic creatures on a different alien planet, and the giants actually genetically engineered them to be like to groom them as opposed to you know, parasite them, whatever the adjective for parasite is. And so they have a very, very ignoble origin, but they think they're like the kings of the world and the smartest and most in control of everything. One of the nice things about Zbrush that I wish existed in real, well, it kind of exists in real life sculpting. So I can just take this area and isolate it and be like, all right, I am working only on you right now. And if I could find my isolate, I'd be able to do it even better. Everything's scrunched on the screen, so I don't see everything great right now. Amy says that first one reminds me of a kangaroo. Yeah, a very weird kangaroo. Yeah, D-Flow Sound says, really cool. His work has that eldritch abomination feel. Something so alien that you can't wrap your brain around it. Yep, exactly. Which is very good for some things, but not good for like a fantasy action adventure book where this is one of the characters that you want to go on an adventure with. Alright, it's pulling out his little claws. And then I gotta give him a little kind of spinneret hole in his palm. They can exude this webbing that, well, it's useful in all sorts of ways. But you can imagine, like, their origin as parasites, there were all sorts of reasons to do webs. Hi, Brad. So this is a new computer, and I do not have all of my normal tools and layout in Zbrush. So I am just really struggling and going very slow right now, trying to, because I have at work and on my old computer I have everything very customized to special places, and now I have to find things in different places. Because this was kind of an emergency change of plans to do a stream on this computer. Well, I gotta say, I'm pretty impressed with myself, though. Within 15 minutes I was able to install my streaming software, figure out how to get it to show my 4K second monitor, and only spend about 20 minutes of futzing around wasting your guys' time. So, making progress. Learning stuff. One of the most interesting things about this character, well, this character's race, is that they are referred to as cleaners in the world of Talifar, and the reason is because, and this is kind of a spoiler, so if you don't want the book spoiled at all, tune out for 15 seconds. But they're actually like the toilet cleaners, but they don't clean the toilets. They actually eat out of them. So the world has this amazing organic sewage system, and it is these critters that eat all the sewage. And so naturally, the rest of the sentient creatures on the planet consider these things to be pretty gross, while they consider themselves to be, like super smart and highly enlightened and the best hope for mankind. Well, for their kind. So yeah, there's all sorts of funny dichotomies going on in the backstory. But when Beaumark finds that out about halfway through the book, it's pretty hilarious and shocking scene. Finds out he's been traveling around with this strange creature he's never known before, and suddenly he finds that out about him. So right now I'm just kind of playing with the basic proportions and design, kind of shape language. I don't know how symmetrical I want to make this hand. It was described as a 6-fingered hand where it's all like pincher, like, thumb and forefinger. I think in one of the drawings I did, I had one of the, like, the back claws had kind of a fork shape to the claws, so they can fit the more spiky ones on the front, and that would really help with grabbing and manipulating. So I think I'm gonna stick with that. Deflo says, question for me. I'd like to get into clay sculpting and have next to no experience. I was thinking of following your Sculpting 101 series. Saw it all already. Well done. Do you think it's a good idea to jump into something like what you made in the video, or would it be better to practice basic shapes, parts of the face in isolation, etc.? So, in general, when you're first starting to learn, well, almost anything, you're going to have two competing interests. You're going to have one impulse, which is to make the coolest, most epic thing ever, because, I mean, that's the reason you're attracted to getting into that medium in the first place, is you've been inspired by other stuff, right? So, like, beginning filmmakers, they all want to start by making, Lord of the Rings, but better. And, beginning video game makers are like, I'm going to make Skyrim, but better. And yeah, same with sculpting. You probably have this idea of some amazing, brilliant sculpture that would probably require, 10 or 15 years worth of experience to be able to even just know how to do, like, properly. But that is like a huge part of the reason you're into it in the first place. So I hate to tell people, just do like practice pieces that you don't care about. So that's the most like economic way to do it, is to just do some practice pieces first that you just consider garbage and you're going to throw away. If you have the emotional fortitude to do something like that, I recommend that. But if you're going to feel like it's just drudgery because you're not really doing the thing that you were excited about in the first place, then, jump into the exciting thing in the first place. Just don't be shocked and dismayed when it turns out that it doesn't turn out the way you were hoping, and you're going to learn a lot. And then, hey, try it again. And this time you'll be twice as fast and twice as good. So that's my advice. Amy says having 6 fingers would make typing a lot faster. Yeah, so it's interesting. They have a form of writing that is kind of like Braille, where they punch holes in cards, or like any semi-thick material. They punch a series of holes with their fingernails to write. This guy is a prolific author, and the whole reason that he joins up with Beaumark on the adventure is so that he can write a best-selling book about humans and about this culture that Beaumark comes from that the cleaners haven't discovered yet. The cleaners think they know. They've like gone all over Talifar and know every culture and are embedded in every culture. But so when he finds out that Beaumark has never seen his people before, it's a big opportunity for him. Amy says, I usually try something I could get excited about. Probably not the main inspiration, but still exciting, but within my skill range. Yeah, that's probably the ideal balance. Sometimes it's hard to tell what your skill range is at first. So the biggest tragedy that you want to avoid is jumping into your mega epic super project and then failing fairly fast at it and realizing, oh wait, this is going to take a long time to get to the point where I can do that, and then just giving up on it because you realize this is so hard. Whereas if you kind of build yourself up slowly to that point, you get those little like mini milestones where something clicks. You have little epiphanies where you're like, oh, if I do this, the eye looks way better. Oh, if I just like rotate my tool right there, I make the corner of the mouth look great. Those kind of little mini accomplishments feel so great, and then they can kind of propel you on further. Defo says, yeah, I do music and computer programming, and everything you said applies to those as well. If you approach either one with the intention of making your dream vision right away, you'll be discouraged. Yep. I believe I've heard it said, and it sounds right to me, that it takes 10,000 hours to really get good at a thing. And yeah, I've probably spent 5,000 hours on a lot of things and got like semi-competent at, like Zbrush, for instance, that I'm doing right now. I know about 10% of the program, and I use about 2% of the program on a regular basis. Whereas if I had I spent 10,000 hours in it, by this point I would know all the ins and outs, and I would be doing, my workflow would be way smoother and more competent. And it's just like, well, I I know enough where I can get my ideas out there well enough. And as I continue to get more ideas out there, every time I get a little bit better at it. So digital sculpting is probably one of those things, along with traditional sculpting, that I'll probably be spending most of my life doing. I just find it so gratifying. Amy says, example, I just got into sewing, so I started with making thumb holes in sleeves. Then I moved to pockets and added one to a skirt, and now I just make a pair of simple arm warmers from scratch. Oh, very nice. Yeah, that's a very smooth curve right there. That's a great ramp to get yourself up into it. I don't know if that's something that just came naturally to you to give yourself that kind of a ramp. Or if it required some like pondering, but either way, that's definitely the way to go. Spike Sparkle, hello. Why do I use ZBrush instead of other digital modeling programs? So in my day job, I use a lot of level editor type stuff, and for modeling things, I use Maya. ZBrush is pretty much the industry standard when it comes to digital sculpture at this point. Mudbox made a run at it for a couple years, and it caught on in a few like Hollywood effects shops, but it never really caught on in the game industry as far as I know. And it seems to be kind of on the outs now. For better or for worse, ZBrush is the standard. And I went through that horrendous learning curve to get the basics and like figure out how to move the camera and why my things would randomly disappear and that sort of stuff. And so I'm pretty invested in this one. So part of the really important part at this stage when you're blocking in a creature is to make sure that you're finding the landmarks of where your bones are protruding, causing little bumps on the skin to come out, because those become very important landmarks for telling your proportions and for thinking anatomically about it instead of just thinking about basic shapes. I usually go in and kind of exaggerate the planes and the angles. Like in this case, this finger was kind of puffed up like this, and it was creating sort of a noodle shape, just a bendy straw. Fingers don't usually do that. So even though there could be some skin and flesh up there, padding it out and giving it that look in the final sculpture. For now, I want it to be very clear. So in my head, there's a bone that starts here and ends here. And so I have that in my head as I'm working. Amy says, I've always moved gradually between different hobbies, so it's just something I've realized works for me. Yep, sounds like a... So you have experience, you've learned how to learn well, or learned how to teach yourself well. That's awesome, especially, man, if you learn that when you're young, you're going to have a much more fulfilling, creatively fulfilling life. Probably fulfilling in most ways. It's kind of like, it's not kind of like, I think it exactly is deferred gratification. It's deciding, it would be super fun to do this thing right now, but I can have more fun later if I do this thing that's not quite as fun now. Which I think is, deferred gratification is the number one determination of how happy and content you're going to be in life. And how successful you will be. Spike Sparkle says, alright, thanks for the answer. I'm using Blender and I figured I'd do everything there, but this looks like it can achieve really natural and organic curves. Yeah, so Blender is more a polygon modeling tool. So there's modeling and there's sculpting. I think Blender has some sculpting tools as well. Some of the modeling software is starting to incorporate sculpting tools as well. But yes, Zbrush is still by far the standard. I can't remember, is Blender the free software, or am I getting that mixed up with? There's another one that's got a one-word name like that. Oh, I guess technically they all have one-word names, except for ZBrush, or Zbrush if you're British, which I'm not. Or even Canadian. In Canada they say Zbrush? Just sounds wrong. I don't know about Australia. Do Australians say Z instead of Z? Someone from Australia, tell me. I would love to do these nails in a more unique way than what I almost always do, which is where I kind of carve this little cuticle area, and then it comes down around. Not sure how to do it. Because this is a really alien creature, I feel like I have an opportunity to do something more unique here. Spike says, yeah, Blender does have some sculpting, but it feels clunkier than this looks. It is free and open source too, so maybe that would improve in time. Ah, yes. Brad says, we totally say Zed. Brad, are you Canadian or Australian? Josh, so are those tips of fingernails or bones? So they're going to be fingernails. And I don't want them to look like fragile. They need to look pretty robust. So I'm not liking this curve here. This gives it kind of like a vampire, or werewolf feel. So I'm going to experiment with, I'm going to use this inflate brush and just fatten them up and think of different ways that they could embed into the flesh. Brad is Australian. Okay, good to know. So it sounds like, along with using the worst measuring system, the imperial system, we also say the letter Z incorrectly. And I apologize for that to the rest of the world. Someday we'll be smart enough to use millimeters and centimeters and such. Although the one thing that really bothers me is, why do you guys say kilometers instead of kilometers? And I think you also say distributors instead of distributors. It flows so much better. It's like the difference between Caribbean and Caribbean, right? Caribbean sounds so much better to me. But it's Pirates of the Caribbean, so it's just got to be that way, I guess. Ooh, I'm kind of liking the idea of giving this guy a little bit of, what is that called? Apparently I don't have words right now. Brad says he's Australian or Aussie or drunkard. All are valid. All right, Bruce. Brad says New Zealanders say it too, except it sounds like Zid. Indeed. Zbrush. Kind of, they seem to have like a little bit more of the South American accent than Australianers do. Australianers. D-Flow says kilometer, like centimeter, is technically correct. Yeah, but there's no like good flowing way to say centimeter, right? Centimeter sounds right, but kilometer, that flows because the O has that nice flowing vowel sound. I guess I doesn't flow like O. You should know about that, DL Flow. D Flow. And you agree kilometer flows better. Thank you. Okay, so if this nail is coming out of the bone, I wonder if I could just make it more like a horn, like an extension of the bone, rather than having a cuticle and nail bed and all that. That definitely would make it tougher, well, less fragile than long fingernails or claws. Just make them more like horn spikes. Brad says, I say both things both ways, and I'm not sure I have any rhyme or reason for why I say it one way or the other. Yeah, there's a couple words like that for me as well. In my part of the U.S., people say the sweet made out of butter and what else? Cream? Sugar and butter, whatever that stuff. So we pronounce it caramel, and I grew up saying it that way, and I said it that way until about 4 or 5 years ago, when I had a change of heart. Like, I read it and I was like, there is absolutely an E in there that deserves to be said, and so I try to say caramel now, even though it's clunkier and doesn't flow, doesn't sound right. But I still say caramel, despite everyone around me. Nasir, hey Nasir, says, Josh, give them straight wide nails, like stabbing knives, like Kahlua from Hunter x Hunter. I don't know that character. So would they have like, let's see, like wide in this direction, or wide in this direction. Like, this is kind of a Freddy Krueger thing. I mean, if it was longer. Big Green says, your creature's flabby body and alien claws reminds me of a water bear bug. Did you take inspiration from them? No, not those guys. Those are awesome guys, though. I'll show you a picture I did of one for a commission. A friend of ours who did the like story editing, kind of editing feedback. He's a professional editing feedback guy, but he's writing his own book and wanted some help with designing an alien. So I did, wait for it, finding it. I did this guy. And so this guy has like a water bear. Oh, sorry. Oh, I can't even move it up the screen for you to see. Hold on, let me see if I can change this in OBS. Nope, that don't work. Happens if I, oh, okay, I can make them small enough. There we go. Yeah, so this little guy is, I mean, it's basically a water bear. But yeah, it is similar to that. Spike says, letter E writes, not all E's are silent. That's right. We should not silence the E's. Amy says, I say caramel both ways. Oh, that's right. It's an A, not an E. Caramel. DJ Gaiden, hey DJ Gaiden, says, I say caramel for soft candies, caramel for hard candies. Well, that is a very odd distinction I've never heard before. So you would have a caramel sundae, but if you were eating a piece of hard candy, it would be a hard caramel. Nasser Feed says, no, they're straight, not curved. Oh, okay. So they're like chisels? Is that? I've never seen this. Let me look it up real quick. You said it's oops. Hunter X Hunter. And Kilua. Okay, let's see what this is. I don't see no claws on this guy. Does he transform? No, all I see is electricity. definitely, I want to give this an unusual, like, it needs to be a claw so it can dig into things for climbing. Because he is a parasite and he climbs around on a big, like, loose-skinned, giant dinosaur-type creature. Oh, I wonder if maybe it had, like, little shark teeth, jaggedy edges around it. I wonder how that would look. For that, I will need to up the resolution a little bit. And here he is with no head. Pretty much looks like those Muppets that go, yep, 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 yep. BitGreen says, very nice picture, thanks, you're welcome. DJ Guidance says, hard vowels for hard candies is my reasoning. Alright, I like that reasoning. That is reasoning I could get behind. Nasir says, Kilua Killing Hand. Okay, that's some more info to go on. Those are some gross veins.
Are you looking at me?
I still don't see the claws you're talking about. I mean, I see claws on the tips of his fingers. Amy says, I don't eat caramels enough to say the word regularly. I think I like the sound of caramel better, though. And D-Flow says, caramel does sound classier, in my opinion. Yes, it's what fancy boys say. See if I bring out crazy little spines like this. What does that feel like? Feels very uncomfortable. But at a distance, I think I really like that. I'd want them to be just fine enough where they're not like sawing into any particular surface, but they give some good grip. D-Flow says, more syllables equals more class. I tried to add more syllables to the word syllable and failed. I apologize for that. Syllables? Nasir says, Josh, you know what I thought about? What about a shark teeth-like shape for nails? Like the sides of the nails are pointy. That is brilliant, Nasir. How much can I pay you for this idea? D-Flow says, I like that. It has a spider leg feel to it. Nasir says, wow, you're doing that. Lol. Yeah, I don't know. It must be the time discrepancy between when I say things and when you hear them. But yeah, I literally just said that before you posted it. It's like, let's try shark teeth. Yeah, and I mean these claws also, they don't have to be um, they don't have to be nail or horn. They could be like, well, I mean, I guess horn is kind of a super modified type of hair that just like grows super bunched tight together, if I recall correctly. Um, which is why it has that kind of strand like texture. Like if you saw a horn, um, you can kind of see the strands in it. So if this was more like a bristly, thick hair ish spike, that would make it more original. And it also goes with their very spiky personality. Orzine, sup? Good to see you. Brad says that claw looks like it would allow them to Spider-Man themselves up a wall. Yes, they are prodigious climbers, so I definitely want them to feel like they can scamper and scuttle up almost anything. And I'm thinking of like blending the spines down as they get near the top, because that's not going to be advantageous to have little ruffles on the top of your nails. You'd just be catching it on stuff all the time, I would think. So it can just kind of turn into more of a knobby, bumpy surface on top. Nasir says, so that means we share thoughts. Yep, it must be some kind of psychic link. I'm gonna have to do it on some more nails to get a sense of if I like it or not. Maybe the profile, the shape being just kind of like this very generic U shape is throwing me off. The beautiful thing about digital sculpting is I could do something like this, be like, nah, or this, be like, nah. Someday they'll have to invent a undo button for Super Sculpey. Amy says, I saw this post a long time ago where this person's younger sister would cut her nails into multiple points at the top. I don't know, it just reminded me of it. I actually did that when I was a kid, and I was always disappointed when the little triangles would break off super fast. Yeah, I always wanted to be a werewolf or a vampire when I was a kid. Orzin says, how's Zbrush treating you? I feel like I'm at a stable point with Zbrush in my life. It very rarely crashes on me. This latest version has a lot of really nice things about it. The most exciting thing about it to me is this gizmo is the greatest gizmo that has ever been in any 3D package ever. It has like all these tools that are super useful up there. When you're rotating something, it actually tells you the number right underneath it, and you can just hold shift to get increments. I mean, it just has all this stuff built into it that it makes me upset that there's all these other 3D packages out there that have been around for 20, 30 years, and none of them have innovated the gizmo as well as this one. That's how ZBrush is treating me. Pretty good. All things considered, pretty good. DJ Guidance says, wouldn't the claw hold the surface better if the spikes are pointing the other way? Yeah, like little barbs, fish hooks. Yeah, let's give that a try on this other nail. Amy says, maybe you can take some inspiration off of climbing gear and how the spikes on them look. Not a bad idea. Yeah, I think I like that. I think I like that better than going the other way. I think this way looks more like fur, or like hair on a spider's leg, and this way looks more shark toothy, I guess. Let's see, I'm going to take Amy's suggestion real quick, because the idea of finding inspiration in different places that aren't even, like you're making a creature and you look at something industrial, that's a very creative idea. Let's see, let's look at Climber's Axe, maybe? So that's got, yeah, all the little teeth are kind of pointing backwards. And then this is an interesting feature here. I assume that all the little spikes facing inward are to help it, if you're going around a little knob, it's always going to have some kind of purchase from as many angles as possible. And then also just the overall flow, the shape of this, where it's got kind of a concave, there's a word for that, curve, a concave curve on the top. That's very interesting. I should try to apply that to his nails and see how that looks. Because I was just saying, I don't want him to have super generic shaped nails, and that would make them less generic, that's for sure. Let's see, so they went in like this, and then like so? Is that right? Huh. No, it just goes out the whole way until right there. That's interesting. So what if they had a little this kind of nubbin at the base of each claw? That's pretty creepy looking. I need to walk that line between, like, I think Yoda actually did that really well, where there are a lot of angles and expressions and lighting where Yoda looks really darn creepy, like he could be in a horror movie. But then there's other scenarios where he looks super cute. So I'm hoping to hit that kind of sweet spot with this guy. Orzine says, I've been sculpting in Blender, not so much in Zbrush. Well, work alarm is going off. We'll have to catch another of your streams later. Have a good night. Thanks, Orzine. Thanks for stopping by. If you're connected to me at all on social media, or if you're on Twitter, totally at me a picture of what you're working on. I'd love to see it. Nasir says, Josh, why won't your creature have nails on one or two nails and other fingertips that are bloodsuckers, like octopus? That's an interesting idea. I'm not gonna make any big changes to what this creature does because there's already 5 or 6 novels written with these creatures in them, and it's very specific, like what they do and how they act and what their biology is for. So I do have 3 different underwater creatures in my world that are still kind of in the 60 or 70% designed area, and some of those could still have room for that sort of weirdness. I can't decide if I like that nail like that. I like how different it is from standard nails, but I know that I personally have a fetish for things that are different. Like I will sacrifice too much to make something different. And by too much, I mean like too much to capture a popular audience. And that's kind of a line that I'm trying to walk with my Tales from Talifar, is I want it to be very unique, but I also want it to be the next Star Wars, so it can't be like Wayne Barlowe level of weird abstracted aliens. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna leave it like this for now, and I'll come back and look at it another day and see how I feel then. It has been over an hour now, so probably a good time to call it a night. My wife's been gone for 5 days at Disneyland, so I haven't got to see her. I just brought her back from the airport, so I should probably go hang out with her, take a walk at 10 o'clock at night. That's when we like to walk. So Brad says, I'm digging the finger with the nubbin. Yep, nubbins are usually great. Spike says, cool that you still get to make decisions like a nail design with all that source material. Yeah, it's so it helps that the person writing all these novels is my mom. So we have a great working relationship, and she's flexible to a certain degree. And although she did fight me on putting 4 legs on this guy, just because when I originally designed him, he had 2, and so she knew she would have to go back and rewrite some stuff. And I told her, you don't have to rewrite it, I will, because I do a pass on all the novels where I like punch up the action scenes, and I put in very visual descriptions that I have in my mind about how the way the world looks. And she's much more like character and plot focused, and so she makes sure that the book is actually like really strong in that department. Like you really actually care about the characters and they're really actually interesting. And then I go in and do kind of an aesthetic pass where I make it interesting to very visual people who want something unique in their fantasy world. So anyway, yeah, it's been a great night, and I will make sure to be back again next Wednesday. I would not be surprised if I'm here again on the weekend, but I don't know what our plans are yet. So I'll update the little stream description when I know that. So thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.